36 years of basketball knowledge and life skills. Your host, Coach Goins, focuses on today's topics on and off the court, helping players and coaches achieve their goals. So get ready for another fast break episode of Basketball More Than a Game with your host, Coach Goins.
Hey, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to say good morning for welcome to another fast break edition of Basketball More Than a Game. Hey, listen, like we always say, make sure you got your shoes laced and you got them laced up tight, because today we are in the studio in Virginia. We get ready to get back on the grind, get ready to head to North Carolina. Unfortunately, it is not for a exciting time. It is for a memorial service for none other than what I deemed my coach, my mentor. And again, just the world of basketball has lost a great mind, lost a great coach. There has been a lot of people. And when I say people, a lot of student athletes, universities, organizations that will feel the impact of losing Coach Jeff Capel Jr. Coach Capel battled ALS for the last 3 years. So listen, we just want to make sure that you understand what this show is about, what this show means to me personally, and what he means to me personally. But before we get into the show, we want to definitely thank our title sponsor, and that is none other than Mr. Curtis Jackson. He is the broker agent benefits coordinator out of Creedmoor, North Carolina. Actually, we'll be seeing him in a few hours as I get ready to head out of the great Commonwealth of Virginia and travel south for Coach Capel's funeral, which will be tomorrow at 2 p.m. on the campus of Fayetteville State University. That's where he played as a college player. That's where his first head coaching job was, in the arena where the memorial service will be taking place for Coach Capel is the Felton J. Capel Arena. That arena is named after his father. So what a huge day for the Capel family. What a huge day for all of his players that are able to travel back and remember him, just taking a little bit of time and just saying thank you for what they did for him personally. But before we do that, we want to stop and definitely recognize his beautiful wife, Jerry Capel, and we just want to thank her. I got the phone call from her Monday in reference to exactly what happened. So in that, we want to thank her for her 5 years of dedicated service and just being alongside Coach and raising two wonderful young men, or just men now, not young, and that was Jason Capel and Jeff Capel. We'll talk about more of those guys in a little bit, but we want to definitely thank Jerry for being beside Coach the last 3 years. As this dreaded disease ended up on their doorstep, and they dealt with it every day, battling just like Coach battles. But ultimately, we lost the battle, but Coach gained his heavenly reward. So we certainly thank Jerry for her flawless execution of making sure Coach had everything he needed and being by his side and making sure that he was taken care of. So we love you, Jerry, for all of that. But before we get any deeper into the podcast, we definitely want to just stop and reflect on some of the things that went down in our lives as players, as went down in our lives as just learning how to be a man. Sometimes you think back in R&B groups, and you think of the group called Boys to Men, and they were singers. But what Coach Capel was able to do, he took players and he taught them, he got them as boys and he turned them into men. And that was just through his passion, through his leadership, through his dedication. Not just what he did on the court, it's what he did off the court. And last month I had an opportunity to go by and see him and spend some time when I was down at Fayetteville State University, where the service will be tomorrow. But we went down and did a one-day basketball camp, and it was just a tremendous outpouring, and we certainly appreciate United States Basketball Association for coming in and providing that. His youngest son, Jason Capel, is the vice president of the United States Basketball Association, and what they were able to do was remarkable on that one day. And his former players came back, and of course Darrell Armstrong that played for him at Fayetteville State, and that went on and started in the NBA, and now is coaching in the NBA. What a just tremendous job, and just being able to come back and give back to Coach, because he's done so much for all of us. If I could line up his former players and behind the mic, and we could go story after story after story, and just capturing everything that he did for everybody, it would just be a tremendous feat. But what we want to do is just share with you you this morning some of the greatest things that, we were able to accomplish together. So in that, I was 13 years old. So let's just kind of turn back the hands of time. And Coach came up to me when I was a freshman at Pinecrest High School. That was actually me on ESPN. He did a great piece on him this past week during the Duke game. So we certainly appreciate them taking time out and recognizing Coach. And also recognizing Pinecrest High School. But in that, Coach came to me at 13 years old and asked me, would I be his manager? And I was like, a manager? He said, well, we call them student assistants. And this is what it, entails. And I was like, well, you know what you got to do? You got to talk to my mom. So Coach says, okay. So he, took me home and he said, and she said, Jeffrey, I can't pick him up every day. And he said, don't worry about it. He said, I will drop him off every day. So that's when it all started. So I was 13 years old as a freshman in high school in 1981. And guys on that team were, Jeff Carmichael, Johnny Hines, Leon Bryant, Jeff Leake, Jeff Fuller, Chris Perry, and the list goes on. And as we were able to formulate that team, Jeff Carmichael was on that team as well, 1981 Pinecrest Patriots. And in that process, I was able to be a young man and see the insides of a basketball program, learn how to run a basketball program, be detailed in what you have to do in order to run a basketball program. And that's what was so exciting to me. That's what was so exciting to understand what you have to do in order to run a basketball program. So as a young, 13-year-old kid, I was very impressionable. So everything that, Coach was laying down, I was scooping it up. Every time that, he taught me how to break down film from, reel to reel to VCR. It's stop and showing you, what does it look like when somebody comes, up to a pick, read the defense, call out the defense, understand how to defend that, and just working a basketball program from top to bottom. So it was a huge deal. It was a huge, just a great opportunity to be around the game, but a great opportunity for somebody to see something in you and be able for you to come alongside and understand exactly what the game meant. And that's what Coach did. So from the time walking in and getting a ladder and realizing that, there's things that have to be done before the season. And there's things that you have to take care of. So there was times that he showed me how to clean backboards. He showed me how to clean the gym floor. Taking care of the rosters. We had a box of letters, if you would, and we'd take the scorebook, and we would go down and we'd put our teams up, and we would go down and be able to turn those around and raise their names at the end of the gym so people could look and see exactly whose numbers. On what number was number 42, what number was 12, on down the line. And then, of course, the famous key, 442, was the master key of Pinecrest High School gym. And in that process, I'd have coaches' key rings, and it was my job to make sure the floor was tight, the balls were out, the water was, squared away, washing uniforms, making sure, the guys, when in the practice, we would put their number and the tongue of their sneakers because Coach didn't allow them to take their sneakers home, and we put them in the equipment room, and we'd clean off the shelf and make sure that we had the room. So when the guys turned their sneakers in, we would take them in there, set them on the shelf by the numbers. We had the can of disinfectant spray, so we would spray up those shoes and making sure that the room just wasn't purified. But we would do that and set them on the shelves. And then inside that same locker room, or inside that same equipment room, where our basketballs were, it's where all of our warm-up jerseys was. So imagine taking the warm-up, you had your pants in the bottom. So what we did to make sure that we knew who everybody's, what we did to make sure that we knew whose warm-up suit it was, he showed me how to take a piece of tape, athletic tape, and put it around the head of a coat hanger. And when you put it around the head of the coat hanger, you pick up a magic marker, and you would mark the magic. You would write on the magic marker the number. So it would be, number 22, number 12, number 42, or whoever it was. That's how you symbolize. So you hung those up. So it was two hangers, one for the pants and then one for the top. Of course, the warm-ups were green, and down the one side was Patriots, and then the captains actually, the Patriot was offset. So it was very, very distinctive who the captain was. But so as we traveled, this is how we would make sure that we had everybody's warm-ups. So the warm-ups would come in from the sideline. Once they finished warming up, we would take those warm-ups. As we sat behind the bench, we would fold those warm-ups up. So when they would come off the floor, we'd fold them and we would stack them on the bench beside us. And at halftime, we would get up and get out in front of the team and have key 442 and make sure the locker room was open, make sure they had their water. We would take their pants in and we would start that process of hanging them up. So at the end of the game, one thing we would have to do is grab their warm-up tops and make sure that we would match up the tops with the bottom. But it was so helpful to have because you had the flag at the top of your hanger. So Coach taught us how to do that. And at the end of the night, we would make two piles. You'd have the socks, you'd have the uniforms, and then of course, from where the gym was to the field house is where the washer and dryer was. The basketball gym didn't have a wash and dryer. So we would take the uniforms and we would load them up. You go up the hill, dragging them, carrying them, couldn't drive, so you'd have to make that walk up the hill, open up the door, turn the lights on, put all of the uniforms in the wash machine, make sure the setting was right. And I'm happy to say I never faded any uniforms, but we had to make sure that we had the uniforms tight. We would put the powder in the machine and we'd start it and lock everything up and come on back down the hill. And then it was, making sure the gym was squared away. We did the floors. If we had to push in the bleachers, we did all of that. So while we were doing all that, and again, Coach had to teach me all of this because I was 13 years old. Then we'd go in, Coach would be sitting in the office, and he'd be going to have his stat sheet. He'd have the score book. If we won, he'd be, talking about, some of the things that we did good and how we executed well. And then if we didn't win, the things. And I really, honestly, we were very successful. We had great teams. But the things that really stood out in my mind is what we would do when we lost. Not that it wasn't important when we won, but what stood out in my mind is how he would analyze and how he would play it over and over and over in his head of what we needed to do. How do we go back to the drawing board? What do we need to do? So, we would load up, and he said, hey, go out there and crank the car up. And he had a Toyota Corolla or Celica. It was gray, 2-door coupe, sunroof. It was so cool. Black interior. We'd go out and crank the car up and turn that heat on, and we'd load, get the stuff. And if it was wintertime, I'd see that tan overcoat he had. He'd put it on, flip that collar up, and we'd start shutting the lights out and walking out the gym. We locked the gym, and I'd give him his keys, and we'd get in the car and be going down the road. We'd come around the back side of the football field, and within a few feet, he said, hey, get that stat sheet out. I'd had the stat sheet out, and we'd turn the interior light on. How many turnovers did such and such have? And he'd go to, start fussing about, why didn't we take care of the basketball? And, what did they do? Were they clowning around doing, in the gym when they weren't taking it serious? And get the scorebook out. What did he do in the third quarter? We would look and we would drill down into what he did in the third quarter, and then we would look and what did he do in the fourth quarter? And we would talk about a little bit about what he did in the fourth quarter. How many turnovers did he have in the fourth quarter? How many free throws did we miss? We got to make a note. We got to work on that tomorrow. So we would go, and then and as I got older, that conversation, we talk a little bit about that, and I say, Coach, I need to ask you about this. It'd be girl talk. We'd be talking about different things, and how should I ask this girl to the prom, or how should I ask this girl if she wanted to be my lady. So those were the things that really stand out in my mind, because that was the thing. He was like, ask her to be your lady. And what that looked like, and how do you talk to the girls? How do you go from being a boy to being a man? And that's what he did. So many times that we'd be in the gym and we'd be cleaning up. And he would come in and he'd say, hey, I got something in there for you to eat. And I'd come down off of the ladder and I'd go in the gym or go in his office, and he'd ran somewhere and got me something to eat, and I would eat that before the game or before practice. And then we would get on the grind. And again, I'd make sure that the sneakers were out of the equipment room and lined up for the guys, and take their practice stuff, get it washed, and hang it up back in their locker. So, there was so much that what we did, and then be able to get on the road and make sure everything was squared away when we had road games and get back. And Coach lived in Fayetteville. He always lived in Fayetteville. And on the way out of town, last stop, he'd drop me off and say, all right, see you in the morning. Get out of the car and down the hill I would go and in the house, and it would be late when I got in. But the next morning we'd be on the grind, or Saturday morning, if we were practicing Saturday morning, he'd be like, hey, I'm coming through it. He'd come through, and I'd be there, and we'd jump in the car and we head on, and he would give me instructions. Some days I don't want to see a basketball. I'm like, well, I don't want to see a ball. I don't want to see a basketball today. We wouldn't bring balls out of the equipment room. We would be in there and on the grind. And we'd run, they would run steps. They would run the 3-man weave. As 13 years old, you'd sit there and I would take all that in, and then he would talk about, how do you play defense the right way, and how do you cover this man and scoring offensively, and then being go check his box and come back. And I was a freshman, and our top player back then was Jeff Carmichael, and the letters that he would get every day was it was so cool to see the different colleges and universities, and being exposed to that at an early age was just a tremendous effort. But I just want to certainly appreciate Coach for everything that he ever done, every conversation we ever had. I lost my dad to suicide, and the first person that called me was Coach. Just telling me, he was sorry, telling me if I needed anything, inviting me down to come and spend some time with he and his family just to get away. But it was just, it was so many things that would happen during the course of my life, and how he would be there for me in understanding. And then once he moved on to Wake Forest, being able to go to the basketball games at Wake Forest, and then he took the head coaching job at Fayetteville State, and be able to, then I was working as a probation parole officer, and our drug lab was in Fayetteville. So I would always volunteer to take the stuff that would ever need to go to Fayetteville, to take it to Fayetteville, because that gave me opportunity to swing by and hang out with Coach at Fayetteville State, along with Coach Mark Klein, who's now assistant coach at Marshall University in Huntington, West Virginia. So it gave me opportunity to kind of double dip, if you will, to be able to see him slide over and see he and Mark and hang out. Then from Fayetteville State, they went to Greensboro on the campus of North Carolina A&T, and then, of course, I'd make my way to Greensboro, go by the coach's office, hang out with them on the campus of North Carolina A&T State University. So no matter where he was, I always made it my business to go see Coach and the family. Then he took a job at Old Dominion. So I went from Fayetteville to Greensboro to traveling to Hampton. I had the opportunity to go up and spend several weekends with he and his family coming up, and they just allow us to hang out and spend the weekend and go to practice with Coach at Old Dominion and just do what we do. And I was coaching high school then, and just been able to tap into that entire resource and tap into exactly what coaches do. And at that level, and seeing him, to me, one of his greatest wins is when he beat Villanova in triple overtime in the NCAA tournament. What a great, and I remember watching that game like it was yesterday. Mike Jones, P.D. Sessoms, just to name a few, E.J. Sherrod. They did a great job. What a tremendous job. And then Coach went from there to the NBA Developmental League. And then from the NBA Developmental League, coaching the Fayetteville Patriots to the NBA, where he landed the NBA job with the Charlotte Hornets. Then it was the Bobcats, and then went from the Bobcats. Then he finished his coaching career with the Philadelphia 76ers. So we certainly just want to, again, pay homage to Coach Capel. Thank him so much for everything that he did. It's going to be tough as we get ready to start making this move, and got everything packed, and it's about 7 o'clock, and the guys is going to be dropping in. Bobby, he's playing Georgetown this evening, and he's catching a flight into Fayetteville. Bernard and Coach Ken Spencer, who's the head coach at Fayetteville State University, and also Coach Collins, who's the head coach at Maryland Eastern Shore. We were teammates in high school, and then these gentlemen went on to finish great college careers. Now they're college basketball coaches, so they are from Coach Capel's tree. So they will be speaking at the service, and what a tremendous honor that they do. So we wish them continued speed this year during their games, and but also not just during their games, but also today. Be with them as their teams take the court, and as they travel, and everybody travels. So as we start to wind down this show, always remember, one thing Coach always said: it's summertime where players are made. You know what? And I want to say thank you. Lord, thank you for allowing us to have Coach in our lives. Thank you for allowing him to be who he was to us. Thank him for being the father that he was. Thank him for being the husband that he was. But most importantly, just thank him for the man. Not just the coach, not just basketball, but teaching us how to go from boys to men. So we want to thank you. We want to thank his family for allowing him to fulfill his desire. His basketball cue was second to none. But they'll miss their dad. We'll miss our coach. But as Jeff said in the Player Tribune, the tree, he knew this day was coming, and he knew that, people would gather in a small town in North Carolina. They would stand up there, and they would recognize him being a veteran. They would recognize, him being a basketball coach, him being a leader. And they would say, great things. But Jeff said, I'm going to miss my dad. And that's huge. So we wish them Godspeed. We wish them be able to understand and just fall into the arms of the Lord during this time, and just ask him for his saving grace and power. But we want to thank all of our supporters, subscribers around the United States as well as around the country. But I had to come on this morning and do a show in honor of my coach, and that's Coach Jeff Capel. Coach, I want to thank you. I love you. That's what he told me the last time I saw him, before I walked out of the hospital room. When he was in Durham, I was getting ready to leave, and I told him, thank you for everything. And his wife, Jerry, said, stop. He wants to tell you something. And you have to understand, Coach wasn't speaking then. He pointed at himself, he pointed at his heart, and he pointed at me. So he pointed at himself saying, I, pointed at his heart representing love, and then he pointed at me. So, Coach, I love you, and I'll see you one day in the gym. God bless you. This is Coach Goins, and as we always say, make sure that you understand what we do. Make sure that you understand our scripture verse, John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Coach, God bless you, and we'll see you again. This is Coach Goins. You guys have a great and safe day.